other parts of the world where the church is persecuted, where they're under fire. They have to meet in secret. So they're not going out and just inviting the entire city to come into their meeting place. They have to keep their meeting place a secret. That, by nature, is going to help to cause us to have a little bit of some purity of the church, and that you're not going to invite anybody into the church that you don't believe is a Christian. Because if you invite in an unbeliever, you could be getting everybody thrown into jail in some parts of the world. So we look at them and we see how, man, when they go soul winning, when they go witnessing, they can't do it like many times we can do, just go out on a street corner and preach, or into a park and preach, or go door to door and knock on doors. They can't do that. So if they're going soul winning, they're going to have to do, it's going to have to be just personal conversations where they're speaking with people. When they go soul winning, they're risking their lives. And so the fact that there is a threat, in some cases, actually gives them more zeal to go and do that. And in some cases, the fact that they're under persecution causes them to be zealous about protecting the doctrine and the purity of the church. But in some cases, it causes them to compromise, where because, hey, we're all under persecution, so anybody who even says the name Jesus is welcome. And we're not going to really struggle over petty things like doctrine or standards or something like that. And so the churches in persecuted areas can get contaminated. They can get full of leaven that ought to be cut out. There's a tendency to have like a high level of respect for the churches that are under persecution, and we ought to respect what they're going through, and we ought to pray for them. We seriously, that's something that ought to be on our minds, and we ought to care about them. But we shouldn't just assume that just because they're under persecution, their ways of doing things or their standards are automatically better. There's some people have just sort of this automatic respect for anything that the church in the persecuted part of the world is doing, must be a good example to us. Like, hey, look at them. They're not squabbling over standards and doctrines. They might be like Pergamos. They might be like the pastor of Pergamos, where yes, they are suffering, and yes, they have held fast to his name, but they've compromised on things, and so we shouldn't go with that. Then we've got this church in Philadelphia, where they are living under persecution and under some difficulties, as we're going to see here. But this pastor is held fast, and the Lord wants to encourage him. So he says, I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. So we're going to talk about that open door right there. That kind of brings to mind 1 Corinthians chapter 16. Let's go over to 1 Corinthians chapter 16. And verse 9 says, For a great door and effectual is open unto me, and there are many adversaries. So let's back up just a little bit and get some context. The context here is that Paul is writing from Ephesus, and he's writing to the Corinthians, and he's telling them, I'm planning on taking a trip into Macedonia, and then from Macedonia I'm going to come down into Achaia, and I'm going to come see you there in Corinth, and that's my plan. But verse 7 says, For I will not see you now by the way, but I trust to tarry a while with you, if the Lord permit. But I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost. For a great door and effectual is open unto me, and there are many adversaries. So what's going on at this point? This is This is taking place during the events of Acts chapter 19. That 1 Corinthians is written during the events of Acts chapter 19. And there really was a great and effectual door that was opened to Paul in Ephesus, where there's a revival going on. And people are getting saved. People from all over Asia are coming into Ephesus, and people from Ephesus are going out into all of Asia. And so as Paul is staying there in Asia, he's got this unique opportunity where staying in Ephesus is, for the moment, more effective than travel. Most of Paul's ministry was done by travels. He rarely stayed anywhere for a significant amount of time. He would come in, preach the gospel, baptize the believers, and move on to do it again. But he wouldn't abandon. He'd be coming back to encourage them. Well, in Ephesus, something a little bit different is going on, and he's going to spend a couple of years there in Ephesus, way outside of his normal activity. Normally, he'd be on the road again already, but God's doing something special in Ephesus. There's an open door. There's an open door of ministry. There's a revival that's happening. People are getting saved. The word is being spread. The church is growing because God has opened a door in Ephesus, and Paul recognizes it and says, okay, I'm going to have to take advantage of this. I can't just move on. I've got to stay here and work as long as this door is open. Now, you get to the end of Acts chapter 19, and the door slams shut. That's what happens at the end of Acts 19 is the riot where they're shouting, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians," for hours, and then Paul has to leave Ephesus, and you get into Acts chapter 20, verse 1, where he leaves Ephesus and goes into Macedonia. He leaves Timothy behind in Ephesus. That's when 1 Timothy is written, because he's leaving him there temporarily behind. He still hasn't ordained a bishop over Ephesus, and so he's telling Timothy to set in order some things, to charge some that they teach no other doctrine, ordain a bishop, possibly ordain some deacons, because Paul's going to come back through, and he wants Timothy to keep traveling with him when he does. So that's the context of 1 Corinthians 16. That's being written while Paul is in Ephesus, and there's a great door open. Ministry is going on like crazy, but that door is going to slam shut, and Paul is no longer going to have an opportunity to work in Ephesus. He never comes back to Ephesus again after that, because after he does end up going into Macedonia and going into Achaia and spending some time there, he loses a bunch of time because the Jews are lying in wait to kill him in the port, so he has to travel overland, and he doesn't want to spend time in Ephesus, so he sails past it, stops at Miletum, and calls for the elders of Ephesus to come and meet him, and then he tells them that the Holy Spirit has revealed they'll never see his face again. So for the rest of Paul's life, he never steps foot in Ephesus again. So it's a good thing that he stayed in Ephesus for a good long season right there, because he's never going to get a chance to return and minister there again. He can send Timothy, and he can send Tychicus, and he can send others to go and minister there, but he's not coming back. So all of that is to say, when the Lord is talking about an open door, I believe he's talking about an opportunity in the ministry. I think he's talking about a movement, a revival that's going to happen. So let's take that understanding back into Revelation. Go back into Revelation chapter 3. Where he says in verse 8, "I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name." Now, when he says thou hast a little strength, I don't believe that's like, you only have a little strength. I think that's a compliment when he says thou hast a little strength. This man does have some strength. We are puny. in the sight of the Lord, our strength is nothing. And if we have any strength, then it's imputed strength. If we have any strength, then we got it from God. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Where did this guy get strength? Again, we're not given a lot of details about him, but there's some things that we can deduce. If he has strength, where did he get it? He got it from the Lord.